business owners. My name is Andrew Bellet, and I am a human resources representative. Today, our panel discussion will be about the right to refuse service based on ethnicity and/or sexual orientation. Joining us today are our four panelists: Jacob Zertucci, a civil rights attorney; Miss Emily Moore, who is a corporate lawyer for Chick-fil-A; Mr. Hella Odidi, a business ethics professor at Brown University; and Miss Allie Underwood, who is a fellow business owner as well. Now, panelists, we have a total of 20 minutes, and each of you will have at least a maximum of 4 minutes to give a response to your certified question. And afterwards, when the questioning process is ended, we will have time for an audience Q&A. And by then, we will have at least 4 minutes for it, and each of you will have to give a 1-minute response at least. Also, panelists, please do not interrupt one another when answering a question, and the same goes for audience members. If you feel at any point that you are disturbed or something of the sort, please try to refrain yourselves while the panelists are up and speaking. Now, without further ado, let's begin. First question goes to you, Mr. Zertucci. What laws have been put in place concerning the issues of a business's right to refuse service, and how has this impacted your view?
Okay, hi, my name is Jacob, as Andrew said, and there are two kind of main laws that have been put in place surrounding this issue that have impacted my point of view about this topic. The first one is the Civil Rights Act of 1964. The Civil Rights Act has it has an article in it, Article 7, which kind of focuses on employment discrimination, and it says that employers cannot discriminate who they hire based on race, nationality, color, or religion. And an interesting thing to note about this article is that it does not cover age, gender, or sexual orientation. So this kind of hole in this law was pointed out last year in 2014 when a bed and breakfast in Arizona refused service to a homosexual couple because they said it was against their religious beliefs. Why this is kind of important is that it started a process of, in Arizona, they wanted to create an act that would have allowed businesses to discriminate or to refuse service to the LGBT community. It was vetoed because, according to the New York Times, the main reason why it was vetoed was that it would have given businesses the right to discriminate against the LGBT community under the guise of religious freedom. So, as it is now, there are 20 states that have put laws in place that are meant to reinforce the Civil Rights Act of 1964. They protect the LGBT community and make it illegal for businesses to refuse service to the LGBT community because of their sexual orientation. Another law that I felt was pretty important was the American Disabilities Act. This act it makes it so that buildings and businesses cannot make their buildings inaccessible to the disabled, and that they must serve the disabled people. And so this law kind of works together with the Civil Rights Act to help fill in some of the holes. So I am against a business having the right to refuse service to anybody, and I feel that the laws put in place should be kind of broadened so that they do include sexual orientation, age, and gender, which are now not currently covered by them. That's my stance on that.
Thank you very much for your response, Mrs. Zertucci. Miss Emily Moore, you are next. Your question is, why was Kim Davis not protected by the law?
Thanks, Andrew. Hi, everyone. I'm Emily, and as a corporate lawyer for Chick-fil-A, I do support a business owner's right to refuse service to anyone for any basis that is not covered by the Civil Rights Act of 1964 that Jacob mentioned earlier. I do have some experience with this topic. According to the Gateway Pundit, the Chick-fil-A president, Dan Cathy, has come out saying that he believes in traditional values and the biblical definition of the family unit, which implies that any marriage that is not between a man and a woman is unacceptable to him. Now, this caused a lot of outrage and boycotting. However, this was Dan Cathy's practice of freedom of speech, and in most states, it is legal for his establishments to deny service to anyone based on their sexual orientation. Now, according to LegalZoom, there are 30 states that have not made any changes to laws regarding discrimination based on sexual orientation, and Kentucky is one of those states. So Kim Davis, you may have heard of her, is a clerk from Kentucky that was given the responsibility of issuing marriage licenses. But after the Supreme Court ruling, she felt that she had to deny service to these couples because of her religious views. And she was held for contempt because she is in a political position. Now, if she was the owner of a place of public accommodation, this would not have been an issue. And if she was not in a political position, she could have just been fired. But because she was elected into this position, as a Democrat, by the way, she was taken into custody. And according to CNN, she was only released when the judge was certain that the office would continue releasing marriage licenses to qualifying couples without Kim Davis's interruption. So again, I do support businesses' rights to refuse service to anyone on any basis that is not race, religion, color, or place of origin, but Kim Davis was the exception because she was not the owner of a place of public accommodation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your response. Ms. Odidi, the next question belongs to you. Now, what are some examples of how business owners and employees exemplify the 3 levels of business service?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Janelle Odidi. As Andrew stated, I'm a business ethics professor at Brown University. So the 3 levels of business are how we act as individuals in the business, how we structure these organizations, and how these organizations, laws, in our society are put in place. The ways I think we can all act accordingly within the business world is by attributing these 5 things and thinking in these 5 manners in terms of thinking about the greatest good. Am I serving the majority of my population in the greatest way? So the pros outweigh the cons, and if not, then you probably shouldn't be acting that way. A second idea to think about it is in terms of rights and duties, in terms of human rights, as Jacob stated, the Civil Rights Act, and identifying the rights and remembering how to treat others in terms of these rights, and in terms of your own rights as well. And a third way to think about it is fairness. I think about it in terms of the golden rule: do as unto others as you like done unto you. And a fourth way to think about it is virtue in terms of compassion and thinking about, this is really ethical, would I like it if somebody treated me this way based on my orientation of any sorts. And then a fifth way to think about it as well is thinking about the common good, like I stated before, thinking about, am I serving my demographic? Since each business has a certain market, are you serving that market to the best potentially? And what is the fine line between being exclusive and being discriminatory? It's a very slippery slope in some circumstances, so I think it's very important to think about it. And again, I am against business owners refusing service because it is simply unethical.
Thank you. Ms. Underwood, the last question is yours. Now, what do you think is the fine line between being exclusive and discriminatory?
Hi everyone, I'm Allie. So I am for a business's right to refuse service. I think that, as we've discussed, the federal government defines discrimination as refusing service solely on race, color, national origin, or religion. But that's when places of public accommodation, they refuse service to them only because of those reasons, not because of their behavior, their dress, or other factors. And I believe that it's not discrimination when you are protecting the customer's safety, when you are kind of upholding just your brand's values in terms of style and whatnot. So there are many situations which we should refuse service and which we kind of don't even think about anymore because we are refused service every day in certain ways. For example, because age is not something that's protected, we have to consider for each place of business what age is appropriate for people to be coming in and everything. For example, you can't get into bars or some concerts or some restaurants if you're under 21 because there's alcohol being served and it's not a good environment for children. And when it comes to attire, there are places that are just more formal and they won't let you in if you're wearing more casual wear, and that's just kind of to establish like their own like brand guidelines and their own brand experience, but it has to be applied across the board. So if one demographic comes in wearing something and they're not let in, and another demographic comes in and they're wearing the same thing and they are let in, then that is discrimination. Because the difference is their demographic and not their dress. And I also think it's important to note that I think it's also important to note that places my position on this is that I believe that businesses should be able to refuse service, especially in situations where it will make customers' experience better, it will protect people from harm, various hygiene rules as well, and yeah, I'm pretty firm on that.
Thank you for your time. Audience members, again, I'd like to thank you for all coming out today and hearing our panelists talk. Again, panelists, thank you for joining us today. Mr. Zertucci and Ms. Ogidi for your stances against the idea, and for Ms. Underwood and Ms. Moore who were for the situation. Now, again, we have the audience Q&A, so remember, we have 4 minutes total, and each panelist has at least 1 minute to respond. So, from the audience, are there any questions? Yes, you, madam.
So, I'm curious if any of your panelists think, or would think that people within that LGBTQA+ community should be denied service based on the business owner's religious beliefs.
Well, Ms. Moore, I believe that's your question. Should people within the LGBT community be denied service based on the business owner's religious beliefs?
Well, the question is, should business owners be able to deny service? And that's a tricky question. That's up to the individual. That is a personal value that any business owner can choose to uphold. But the fact is that it is legal in 30 states to deny this service. And since it is a federal law, the states can change this, but if they haven't already, then any business owner within that state can deny any LGBTQ member based on that demographic. But if they do vote on this, then any business owner within that state can face legal charges.
Thank you very much for your response. Any more questions from the audience? Yes, sir, you in the back.
Are there any laws currently being debated for future changes regarding the right to refuse service?
Mr. Zertucci, I believe that's your question. Now, again, I will restate this question. Are there any laws currently being debated for future changes regarding the rights to refuse service?
So, yes. So kind of going back to the last question, there's been a push recently to include and expand the Civil Rights Act of 1964 to include mandatory service to the LGBT community. And there's also been well, at least me personally, I feel that more laws need to be put in place to clearly define what is allowed and what isn't allowed, because right now there's a kind of a big gray area and wiggle room for like businesses to kind of still discriminate, as kind of Ali pointed out. So I don't feel that all things should be covered, such as, let's see, if you're being disrespectful in a movie theater, I feel that the movie theater should have the right to remove you.
I apologize, Mr. Zucci, that's all we have time for. Very sorry about that. We have time for one more question. Anyone from the audience, one more question? No? All right then. I believe that concludes our panel for today. Once again, thank you all for coming out today, and have a fantastic weekend. Thank you.